solid as a rock, tougher than granite, and impervious to the sands of time, there's nothing quite like a Mercedes G-Class. Politically incorrect, hugely expensive and compromised on-road, it won't satisfy those simply after a Range Rover or Mercedes GL-Class luxury SUV. But those in search of the most awesomely capable off-roader money can buy will love the thought of owning one. You know the real thing when you see it, and when it comes to off-roading 4x4s, this is the real thing, the Mercedes G-Class. The G stands for Geländewagen, which roughly translates as go anywhere vehicle. Go anywhere in this case meaning just about any inhospitable part of the globe you can think of, from the Sahara Desert to minus 53 degrees centigrade in the Siberian Arctic. Ordinary luxury SUV buyers, in other words, need not apply. And yet they do. Over 30 years after it was originally launched for Cold War military use as well as civilian transport, this G-Class these days enjoys a new lease of life as a fashion icon that you're as likely to find on the King's Road as in the Kalahari. It's the longest serving passenger car in Mercedes-Benz's 120-year history, with a track record that includes everything from the transportation of 2 popes to an outright win in the grueling Paris-Dakar Rally. 3 decades have seen this car successfully overcome any obstacle it has encountered, including obsolescence, which is why over 10 years after Mercedes decided to kill it off in favour of more modern luxury 4x4s like their GL class, it's still going strong. Now available in the UK once more, powered either by a V6 diesel or a wildly potent AMG petrol V8 at prices that'll make it a very rare sight indeed. Sensibly, you wouldn't buy one. But then, sensibly, you wouldn't attack the kind of killer terrain that this G-Class could deal with without breaking sweat. Only a Land Rover Defender could rival this, a utilitarian alternative with feeble diesel power that few would want to run as everyday transport. This G-Class, in contrast, manages to be just as capable, yet just as powerful and almost as luxurious as any Range Rover. It is quite simply unique. But then, uniqueness can take many forms, not all of them desirable. Let's check this car out. Now, I can see why celebrities and the super rich stump up supercar money for one of these. The door with its fat black handle opens and shuts like a bank vault. Inside, you sit higher up than in any other 4x4, staring imperiously down upon a sea of pretend SUVs not fit to soil this Geländewagen's mud flaps off the beaten track. HGV-style bonnet-mounted indicators mark the corner perimeters of a square, stolid shape, guaranteed to severely frighten any unfortunate Super Mini you bear down upon in the fast lane, as at the wheel you command both the road and your destiny. Just as driving a Ferrari makes you feel like Fernando Alonso, at the wheel of a G-Class you're suddenly a UN peacekeeper in Sarajevo, or in command of an Iraqi combat unit clearing insurgents on the road to Fallujah. Brilliant. And as long as you approach the driving experience in this frame of mind, rather than expecting this to be some kind of Range Rover or Mercedes M or GL class model, then all will be well. It's only when you return to the real world that you notice the slow-witted steering, the wind noise from the massive door mirrors, and the vague body control that makes sharp cornering something of an inexact science. Mercedes in the UK has tried to do something about this latter issue by fitting tortoise springs, but has arguably only made things worse by adding to this roster of faults a choppy ride liable to throw you out of your seat if you get a bit over-enthusiastic on the sharpest tarmac bumps and dips. This is a difficult thing to park too, because whether you look over your shoulder through the rear window or use the rearward parking camera, a lot of what you can see is masked by the huge door-mounted spare wheel. No matter, the military surplus feel arguably adds to the whole experience, wearing though it might become were you to have to use this G-Class for everyday commuting. But of course this isn't an everyday commuting car. It is instead the final jigsaw piece for many a multi-millionaire's ultimate multi-car garage. Not to sit inside with the Maseratis and the Maybachs, but to guard the place, parked outside, covered in muck, happily battered by wind and rain. You'll want to get this car covered in mud and muck as often as possible if you're to really enjoy using it. Most luxury 4x4s, however potentially capable, don't take kindly to this, and in most cases their owners end up finding that off-road excursions just aren't worth the hassle of cracked spoilers, scraped doors and scratched alloys. The G-Class is different, with plenty of ground clearance, which is why it can ford up to 600 millimetres of water, more than a Land Rover Defender. Plus, of course, you've got a proper low-range transfer case. You simply push this rocker switch near the gear stick into low, and when you're off-road, you've then got 7 low-range gears for really sticky traction work. But that's just a start. When things get really boggy, you've got the option to lock each of 3 differentials, middle, rear and front, using this simple push-button system on the top of the dash. And you've got a specially developed ESP stability control system, BAS brake assist, and what Mercedes calls 4ETS. That's probably the most important of the 3 electronic systems. This electronic traction system is able to get you out of the most glutinous bog by transferring power only to the wheels with the grip to use it. And the result of all this cleverness? Well, a car that can potentially get you through almost anything. Depending on the variant that you choose, it can scale gradients of up to 80%, preserve directional stability at a 54-degree tilt, and thanks to a 36-degree approach and 27-degree departure angles, clamber over apparently insurmountable obstacles. It's all enough to embarrass supposedly capable off-roaders like Toyota's Land Cruiser, for example. But of course, most of the time, the most daunting thing your G-Class will have to face is the school run. Inevitably, it's equipped to deal with that too. Under the boxy bonnet of the G350 CDI Bluetech variant that most UK customers choose sits a 3-litre turbo diesel powertrain that generates just 210 brake horsepower from its V6 engine, and of course is mated to permanent 4-wheel drive, as well as a 7G-tronic 7-speed automatic gearbox. That's the car I'm driving here. It has a prodigious 540 newton meters of torque, hence the high 3,500 kilogram towing weight. And that's enough to shock other road users as much as it'll shock you when you put your right foot down and get from rest to 60 in just 9.1 seconds, on the way to a top speed of 108 miles an hour, necessarily limited by the barn door aerodynamics. With a combined cycle fuel reading of around 25 miles to the gallon, this is the more sensible of the 2 G-Class variants on offer here. But then, if you were being sensible, you wouldn't be considering this car in the first place. So why not consider a completely unjustifiable option, the 500 brake horsepower G55 AMG compressor. This uses one of AMG's old school supercharged petrol V8s to fire this leather-lined military machine from rest to 60 in just 5.5 seconds, and somehow coax it onwards to a maximum speed of 130 miles an hour, only attainable by the fired up or the foolhardy. Manage this and you'll be glad of the carbon ceramic brakes. By anyone's reckoning, this is an unlikely fashion accessory. Yet, despite a set square shape and the aerodynamic qualities of a semi-detached house, that's exactly what this G-Class has become. Now, we're looking here at a facelifted, thoroughly updated version of the W463 third generation model, first introduced way back in 1989 and still going strong. Other markets offer short wheelbase, hardtop and convertible 3-door variants, but here only long wheelbase 5-door derivatives are available, all hand built for Mercedes by off-road specialists Steyr Pusch and in Graz, Austria. Now each G takes over 40 hours to produce, with production limited to just 15 vehicles per day. All models are built on the same tough ladder frame chassis and use the simplest mechanicals to ensure that they can be easily serviced and maintained in all parts of the world. Some of the bits are borrowed from Mercedes commercial vehicles, and there's certainly more than a whiff of LCV once you take your high-set seat in the cabin. From here you'll need no convincing of the Geländewagen's 30 years of heritage, thanks to ergonomics that remind you just how far automotive design has progressed since the late 80s. Hence the rather upright driving position, the appalling low-set situation of the sat-nav, and the sighting of the gear stick miles away from where you'd ideally want it. To be fair, the interior design team have made some effort to justify a six-figure asking price, with leather trim extending to the dash and burr walnut fittings, but you don't have to look too far beyond them to see the lashings of utilitarian black vinyl surrounding everything. Mind you, this is essentially a design dating back to the 80s, so expecting it to have interior ambience to rival a current-day Mercedes-M or GL class model is a bit ridiculous. And it's certainly a practical shape in any case, with a boxy, glassy design that offers great all-round visibility, marred only at the rear by that huge spare wheel mounted on the back door. Which, when you come to load up the boot, makes said door a huge thing to swing back and forth. Still, get it open and an enormous luggage area reveals itself. Push forward the rear seats and there's a removal van like 2,250 litres of space available. That's about the same as you get in the more car-like GL class, and enough to easily dwarf the 1,950 litres of space you get in an apparently enormous Mercedes E-Class estate. Now, both of those alternatives can, of course, seat up to 7 people, not an option for G-Class customers, despite this vehicle's huge 4.6 metre total length. Still, for those you can carry in the back seat, things are relatively spacious and comfortable, at least for 2 adults. 3 would be a bit of a squash, but kids will be fine, and they'll love the commanding view out and the rear seat DVD entertainment system if you specified it. Hand-built by Steyr Pusch in Austria, this is an exclusive car, which, as you probably already guessed, means it's going to cost you a suitably exclusive price that you'll be paying not at your local Mercedes dealership, but at the brand's specialist products division at Mercedes-Benz World in Brooklyn, Surrey, the only distribution point for British-bound G-Class models. Now, in theory, Mercedes-Benz UK will sell you a stripped-out G300 CDI professional model, but in practice that's really more aimed at commercial LCV users. So the G-Class range in the UK for car customers is really based around 2 5-door long wheelbase variants, with most likely UK sales, well, they're going to be of the G350 CDI Blue Tech that I've been driving here, costing around £80,000. Now, don't get this model mixed up with Mercedes GL Class, a far more car-like SUV that in, say, GL350 CDI form will cost you around £20,000 less. It'll give you better road holding, more luxury, more power with 265 brake horsepower and 7 rather than 5 seats. So you've really got to want this Geländewagen as an alternative. But I must admit, I do. There is, after all, nothing, say, for perhaps a Hummer that you could directly see as an alternative. Other large 4x4s are almost all vastly less capable off-road, and those that can mix it with this Mercedes in the mud, like, say, a Land Rover Defender, are vastly less usable on tarmac. And when it comes to the flagship G-Class, the awesome 500 brake horsepower G55 AMG compressor, well, I'm not even going to bother thinking about rivals here. It costs £115,000. It's one of those, why would you, but do it anyway sort of cars. Whichever G-Class model you choose, this G350 CDI BlueTech 3-litre V6 diesel, or indeed the bonkers supercharged V8 petrol G55 AMG compressor, you'll find your car very well equipped, as you'd have a right to expect for the very high prices being asked. So all models come with smart alloy wheels, metallic paint, bi-xenon headlamps, front fog lights that light your way around corners. Then you've got the usual Mercedes Command multimedia system with a 4GB hard disk and an inbuilt voice control satellite navigation system. You've also got parking sensors, rain sensing wipers, leather trim that extends to the dashboard, an electrically adjustable steering column, and electrically adjustable and heated front seats with a memory function. A rear seat DVD entertainment system is on the options list, so is a tow bar, but you'll be needing one of those. A G-Class doesn't really look right without it. Safety kit runs to ISOFIX child seat fastenings in the rear, tyre pressure monitoring, 6 airbags, and the usual electronic assistance for stability braking and traction control. But it's the sheer bulk that will protect you most. Anything that you hit will inevitably come off worse. Those who can afford a G-Class are unlikely to be overly concerned about its hefty running costs. And sure enough, the G55 AMG compressor returns just 17.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Now, even if you don't mind that financially, all those fuel station visits may well become irritating, despite the large 96-litre fuel tank. So a better bet might well be the G350 CDI BlueTech. That's the diesel model that I've been driving here. The BlueTech bit is Mercedes' nod to eco-consciousness, designating the fact that this Euro 5 compatible unit uses AdBlue, an aqueous urea solution that's injected into the exhaust system. Now, this starts a chemical reaction that releases ammonia, which is able to deal with up to 80% of the NOx nitrogen oxides, converting them into harmless nitrogen and water. It might all be just enough to get you off the hook with your green-bearded friends when it comes to explaining just why your vehicle belches out an eco-unfriendly 295 grams per kilometre of CO2. After all, a curb weight of 2.8 tonnes has to tell somewhere. At least that's not as bad as the G55 AMG compressor, though. That car manages only 378 grams per kilometre of CO2. What else? Well, insurance costs won't be cheap, of course, but at least servicing costs will be kept in check thanks to an assist service computer on the dash that calculates exactly when a garage visit might be needed. And residual values, well, they should be kept very high and quite impressive thanks to this vehicle's relative exclusivity. After all, just 200,000 examples of this car have been produced in over 30 years of production. Look after your G-Class and it should easily outlast both you and its next 3 owners without a problem. Whether you want to make a really big statement with your choice of 4x4 or you merely want the most capable, road-sensible off-roader there is, the Mercedes G-Class offers a money no object solution. With a design dating back to the 70s, it may be old in concept, but it remains classily cool with an appeal that is still undimmed against the changing fads of automotive fashion. Yes, of course, the high pricing is difficult to justify, and you could spend far less on a larger, more practical and better handling luxury SUV. But G-Class buyers want something more than just another luxury SUV. They want something exclusive, something you can't get anywhere else, and something that's more capable than just about anything else on 4 wheels on the world's toughest terrains. It's at home anywhere from Afghanistan to the Amazon, from the King's Road to Kensington, and it is quite simply unique.